In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. It took Matt Coyle a decade to publish his debut novel, Yesterday's Echo. As he celebrates the 10th anniversary of that momentous event, Matt's 10th Rick Cahill story, Odyssey's End, is now available from Ocean View Publishing. Matt came to the craft after earning an English degree at UC Santa Barbara and nearly 30 years in the restaurant management business and in sales. Bruce De Silva of the Associated Press says Odyssey's End showcases Matt's vivid and tight prose with well-drawn characters and tension that rarely lets up. Publishers Weekly writes how Matt cleverly connects his plot threads, packing in a few strong surprises, but his real triumph is in wringing pathos from Rick Cahill's plight. It's a pleasure to welcome Matt Coyle back to the microphone. Great to see you, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
You are everywhere these days. Between multiple public appearances and interviews, you've worked hard to create a career and a life that most of us only dream of. Did you expect you would one day achieve this level of notoriety and success?
Well, I would say if people dream of living my life, they need to raise their target a little bit. I hoped at some point to have a somewhat successful series. So I don't know if I really could envision 20 years out, because it took me 10 years, as you mentioned, it took me 10 years to get published. And now it's this 10-year anniversary, basically, of Yesterday's Echo. So, I'd like to be further along than I am in my career. There's all sorts of goals that I have, but I'm happy with the way things are going, and always happy to, this is pretty much I'm a recluse for right now, and there's a book out. So, of course, yes, I am everywhere. And people, I'm sure, will get sick of me pretty soon. I think the clock is approaching midnight, but I've only got a few more gigs to go. So I think hopefully we'll hit even with everybody.
I doubt that. Tell us what happens to Rick Cahill in Odyssey's End.
Well, in Odyssey's End, it is the third book where Rick has been pre-diagnosed with CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the pro football disease, the brain disorder that leads to diminished cognitive abilities, generally dementia, and early death. So he's in book 8. We learn, there's a little bit of spoiler. We learn he has it. Book 8 at some point we learn he has it. Book 9 we see a real potential symptoms for people suffering from it, which is this violent flash rage that can come up at any moment, the slightest provocation. And so when I got to this book, book 10, I can't, once Rick was diagnosed or pre-diagnosed with the disease, I couldn't have it go away. It couldn't be, he's sick this book, but not the next. This is a life sentence in real life. And so I try to make this unreal world I write, I try to make things as real as possible. So I didn't want to go too deeply into the continuing degeneration, because the story was the thing in this book, but I wanted to, so the angle I took was Rick looking at his own mortality, and he's in a place I never expected him to be when I started writing him 20 years ago, and that's with the family. He's got a wife and a child, and I did not anticipate that. I did not want to have him have a family, and his life evolved, and so it made perfect sense, and I'm happy. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, was to give him a wife and a daughter.
How do you think Leah and Krista have impacted Rick's character growth?
Well, they've changed his, unfortunately, they haven't changed the way he takes cases too much, although they have a little bit in an earlier book. He still tends to get too emotionally involved, but they have made him realize that he's not the number one priority anymore. Not that he's been a self-centered person, but he's just made rash decisions because he's always trying to get to the truth of the matter. He's trying to he's trying to make an unjust world just in the way he sees it. But now with his family, he realizes, it's not just he makes affect him more than him, and of course his sidekick, Midnight, his dog. So every decision weighs more on him, and yet very often he still makes the difficult one and sometimes wrong one. But in this instance, his family is very much foremost in his mind. This isn't a spoiler, it's in the first page, I think. He's estranged from his wife and child. He doesn't get to see his child a couple of weeks a month, but his wife went back up to Santa Barbara where her family is to live with her parents in the meantime. And as we find out, she's contemplating maybe a longer separation. And so Rick desperately wants to get his family back together, but if he can't, and he realizes his time on Earth is ticking down, if he can't, he wants to build somewhat of a safety net for his daughter, because Rick knows better than most, or anyone really, that life will knock you down. And when it does, he doesn't think he'll be there when life knocks Krista down, and he wants to at least have as much of a safety net, and that would be financial, for her as possible. And so comes knocking on his door is a potential for his financial, the beginning of his financial aspirations being answered, but it's when someone from his past, Peter Stone, who's a very bad dude. He and Rick have a history. Stone tried to kill him once, but then he saved his life another time. But he's a very dangerous man. He's a very self-centered man. He's come to Rick. He'll pay him $50,000 if Rick can find someone, and he gets $25,000 up front. So he's made him, in the old, the 50-year-old adage, he's made him an offer he can't refuse. And so he knows it's not the right thing to do in terms of what his estranged wife would like, but his goal is, my daughter, I need to, before I leave, I need to build at least a soft padding for her to fall on. So he takes the case, and it leads to some interesting and dangerous situations.
Your plots, your stories, and your characters are amazing. How do you build those blocks and turn an idea into a story?
I don't do it the way what most people would think. For me, I have an idea of the story. It's not fleshed out much at all. I see the ending out there, and it's fuzzy, but it's a target. I have to get there in 9 to 10 months. I have to get from where Rick is now to that target. And I know what the bad guys are mostly and what they want. But so there, I've got that. I've got the through line-ish, and I can find my way. But the main thing is, what is going on in Rick's life? What is the major subplot for Rick that he has to deal with? What's the emotional drag in his life? And so from there, the case doesn't necessarily, they don't have to interlock. It would, like the drama in his life and the case. There have been a couple cases where they've kind of linked, but they don't have to. But in taking the case, will it make his life more difficult? Yes, that's always the key. And generally vice versa. What he's going through kind of will make investigating the case more difficult. So I start there, and I build a plot from there. Like I said, I've got that target, but how I get there is really evolves around Rick and the decisions he makes, and which is ass backwards. But the decisions he makes will build the plot, but it has to make sense. So it doesn't like I'm just, he's making these weird decisions, and then the plot goes here. It has to kind of all coalesce. So it's an odd way of doing it. It's inefficient, but it's the way it's worked for me. And so I finally given in and realized, well, you have to do it the way you do it. So no one wants to see that sausage being made, but somehow the links are all together by the end.
Matt Coyle is our guest. The 10th Rick Cahill novel, Odyssey's End, is available now everywhere from Ocean View Publishing. His website is mattcoylebooks.com. So you are not a pantser or a plotter. You have kind of your own drill that just happens for you.
Yeah, and it did come through, revision all these years. I think early on I had skeletal outlines, and the more books I've written, the less I've even had that. I mean, there's even been real fuzzy endings for me when I started. But I've learned to embrace the chaos because it's just the way my mind works. If you saw my office, you would understand. But there've been times when I thought, well, I have to get more organized. I'm actually getting paid for this. I should be more professional. But it just stunted me. I really couldn't find my way into the story. So I've got the end. I've got a target. I've got Rick, get in his head, what's bothering him, and then stumble along. And then finally I'll find the rhythm and go from there.
What do you think the appeal of Rick Cahill is to your readers?
I think it's funny. I was just at an event. I don't remember which event this was. It might have been Warwick's, actually, when I did my launch. Yeah, it was. I woke up to her and she goes, I had to put Rick down. I'm thinking, oh, great. Well, I've lost a reader. And she goes, he just gets me so mad. But then he goes, then of course I picked him up again, and I was fully involved and on to the next one. Because he makes decisions that are frustrating for people that have their acts together. Rick does not have his act together. I do not have my act together. So I think he can't, and that's I'm looking for that. I'm walking the edge. I mean, that is a decision, a choice that I do make, is how can I have him be damaged and make bad decisions and still be able to hold the reader. And I think it's that somewhat realistic portrayal of someone in all this unreal life I put him through. And that he is a real person. He doesn't, if he gets shot in the shoulder in the first chapter, he's not going to be pitching batting practice to the Padres in the fourth chapter. Everything carries over. The emotional scars and the physical scars have weight. And clearly he's got CTE now, so all the physical damage in his life has led to this, and that's part of one of the rules I had, is he can't escape his past. He can't escape the bad decisions he makes. He can't escape the physical traumas he's had in life. And so when I realized, well, this guy's probably got CTE, I just said, well, he's got CTE, and I have to, because I think someone who's lived the life he has would, quite honestly. He's had multiple concussions. He boxed Golden Gloves as a teenager. He played football from Pop Warner age to sophomore year in college. So that's a lot of brain trauma, quite honestly. And so I had to be true to that rule, and it was an odd choice. Certainly my publisher wasn't their favorite choice, but it made for a hell of a book when I revealed it. But I'm happy with the decision. It's one of those things when especially when you write the way I do, is that when you put yourself in a corner, that's generally where you'll find the best answers, and it may take a while, but you're really challenging yourself. You're not taking the easy way out. And I don't think I've taken the easy way out with Rick at all in all the books I've written. I think I've always kind of gone the hard way. In my everyday life, I am very lazy, and I take every easy way out. When I'm writing, I take the hard way.
Were you an athlete when you were younger?
I was an athlete. Yeah, I played, all this. I played baseball up through sophomore year of high school, and I played football in high school. And I used to play a lot of pickup basketball, which is why my knees are so messed up. I mean, I did that pickup basketball in college every day on hard courts for probably, after college, 10, 15 years. So yeah, was a bit of an athlete, not a great athlete, pretty good athlete, but certainly not good enough to progress beyond high school.
Rick radiates an authenticity that kind of whispers perhaps some biographical connections to your real life. Are there any of his traits that you share?
Well, love for dogs, of course. He's got Midnight, his stalwart sidekick and friend, who is bailing him out of situations. I would say stubbornness, for sure, and kind of doing stupid things sometimes. Maybe trying to find maybe not. Honestly, surprisingly, he might be a little more optimistic than me, and just the way his outlook of life. Maybe life rather, even though he is in a very dark place quite often. I think he does try to find the light.
Midnight is a fascinating Watson to his Holmes. How did you develop that character? And what role does Midnight play in Odyssey's End?
Odyssey's End, actually, he does not have much of a role in Odyssey's End. Rick actually is not in half the book. He's in a kind of a mountainous, secluded area, and Midnight is not with him. But Midnight came from one thing with Midnight and Rick is that I aged him in real time, in real years. So the first book was roughly 11 years ago, and Rick is aged 11 years, and Midnight is aged 11 years. So he is 13 in this book. So sadly, he's aging. He can't live forever. That'll be, if the series progresses, that would be a decision to make about when Midnight leaves us, but it would never be on the page. It would always be something we come back, that happened before. But what happened with Midnight originally, because Rick wasn't going to have any, he wasn't going to have any friends. He was going to be this dour, very I don't want to say introverted, but internal character who is carrying this dark cloud around and doesn't have a sidekick of any kind, no Superman sidekick that can physically get him out of situations, no comedic sidekicks that can lighten the mood, and no financially, extremely able sidekick who can bail him out of tight financial or even bail situations. But so I had Midnight, though. Midnight was, at least his dog loves him. He does have a dog at home. There is someone there to wait for him. But luckily, I came up with Moira in book 2, Night Tremors. I needed a private detective for one scene. Came up with her little sawed-off, pissed-off attitude really struck me. When she and Rick interacted, I thought, well, I got to have her more in the book. And then after that, she's in every book. Without her, I don't think I'd be at book 10 because, as I said, Rick would have been too dour, been too dark. I probably would enjoy the hell out of it writing this really dark, secluded character, but the public wouldn't have really liked it. So Moira kind of took the Midnight's role and expanded it. Yes, he's lovable, but everybody's dog loves him. Serial killers have dogs too sometimes. But Moira showed that, first of all, Moira is very capable, very smart. So and pretty centered person. So she showed someone with her character really cared for this guy, that maybe the reader will give him some breaks. Maybe that woman who's put him down for a while will think about Moira and go, I got to go back and take a look at Rick. He frustrates me so much, but he's worth another shot. So Midnight's role is very important, but it kind of got expanded with Moira. But, and honestly, Midnight has saved Rick's life before, which, given the opportunity, a dog would do.
We're in conversation with Matt Coyle, celebrating Odyssey's End, the 10th installment in his award-winning Rick Cahill series, released by Ocean View Publishing and available in hardcover, digital, and audiobook versions. How many more Rick Cahill stories do you think you have to tell?
I'm writing something different right now. So we will, it's called Odyssey's End. I thought very carefully about the title. I would like to get back into Rick's world. We'll say Rick's world, not necessarily Rick, but we will see. Writing something very different, third person, different situation, which is exciting, and I'm way behind, which is not exciting. But there will be no Rick book next year, probably no book at all, because I have to sell something new. My agent has to sell something new, and I have to write it first. So I will not be on the tour next year, most likely, because I would have had to have it done by now, and she would have to sold it by now. But I'm happy with what I'm working on. I think you need to challenge yourself. I would have, if you think about all the series writers like Michael Connelly and Robert Crace and others. I'm trying to think when Connelly wrote The Lincoln Lawyer. It was probably after 10 books, but Crace wrote, when he went to Elvis Cole in third person and wrote the book that broke him out, LA Requiem. I think that was probably his 6th or 7th book, maybe somewhere in there. So I think you have to challenge yourself, do a little palate cleanse. And I haven't written in third person since college, which you might be surprised, it was a long time ago. Decades. So I think the challenge is good to get the juices flowing in a different direction. But yeah, it sure, I told you how I write Rick, and it sure, when I'm stuck, it sure was comforting to be able to go, well, I'll just get in Rick's head and he'll do something stupid or fun or violent, and I'll find my way. Well, I'm a little bit more distance because I'm in someone's head in third person, a couple different heads actually. And I'm still kind of doing that very messy creation process I have. So it's a little scarier when you're not familiar with the folks you're dealing with. But it's challenging, and that's what, I should be challenging myself.
We both attend many of the same conferences, and over the years, you've rubbed elbows with some pretty famous and successful writers. What are some of the takeaways that you've learned from other authors?
Well, it's funny you should say that because I had the opportunity to interview Michael Connolly for Warwick's Books in Coronado about as we speak right now, about 2 weeks ago, and what a great interview! What a very open man discussing his process. And I asked him, which kind of probably would have been seemingly a dumb question, and I prefaced it that way, but I said, was there a certain time when a book where you thought, well, I know what I'm doing. I mean, I have a good feel about this, command of what I'm doing. And he said book 10, which was surprising. I would have thought it'd been like 4 or 5. But so from him, I got, that you're constantly learning. And of course, I get that as well. But I think it's really all the authors I've talked to is just the stick-to-itiveness that you need. I've encountered many really good writers in writers groups over the years, and I was in writers groups for probably almost 20 years. It's been the last couple books where I haven't been, and there have been some outstanding writers in the writers group, but they just didn't. It's a hard process to get published. Maybe it didn't mean as much to them as it does to me, but they just kind of faded away, and you really have to hang with it. And I think even when you're published, you have to just keep pushing through and being like, I made every year I go to Lake Tahoe, and I there's this pier I'm out on in the middle of the night, and I make little resolutions to myself. And this year specifically, I said, well, I really have to challenge myself in terms of marketing, oddly enough, or just doing different things. So I think you really have to continually challenge yourself. I mentioned that I take the easy way in life, but I think taking the easy way in books, after a while, it'll just seem a little rote to the reader, I think. So to constantly, you look at Connolly, he did The Lincoln Lawyer. He did a couple standalones before that. And now he's got The Lincoln Lawyer and Bosch, who are half brothers, working together. And he's given Bosch radiation poisoning, which could, from an earlier situation, an earlier book that's raised its head now, which could be fatal. And he also has got much like he does. I have made Rick in real time. So Bosch is now, I think, 68 or 9 or something like that. So, there's those challenges when you stick to a particular plan and don't kind of bounce around, where you force yourself to deal with the reality, the mortality. I mean, I think you're writing crime fiction. I think mortality is a big part of it. And so, like I've done with Odyssey's End, I'm getting older too. Staring mortality in the face, I think, is kind of part of the writer's journey when you get to be old, at least.
We're in conversation with Matt Coyle. The latest is Odyssey's End, the 10th installment in the award-winning Rick Cahill series. I think the first time we talked was 3 years ago. Has your definition of success changed over time? And what is it?
I have a lot of goals, and I made goals very early, and some I've achieved, but some I haven't, and some I'm not close to. So let's just say the financial aspects of the career is a constant challenge. That's part of one of the goals. I mean, that's kind of how in life we keep score. So, and I'm not thinking of keeping score in terms of winning over someone else. I'm just thinking of where I really want to be, what I consider success. And so I'm not there, which is fine. And I'm continuing to strive. I'm very lucky to have been nominated for a bunch of awards. Sometimes there's a lot of luck involved there, but there's also skill, and I'm not downplaying my writing because I'm very proud of it. Although, every book could be better. Without question, every book could be better. As Robert Crace once said, he's constantly editing, and I agree. Every time I read at a book signing or something, you're kind of editing for time, because you're a few minutes to read. But also in the editing for time, I'm thinking, why didn't I just edit that out in the first place? I didn't really need that. Why don't we just get rid of it right away? So, in terms of success, I've written a 10 book series. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty good number. It's not 33 or 40 or something, but it's a pretty good number. So I consider that a success. I'm very proud of that. Was able to, and a character that evolved so much beyond what I ever considered when I was writing him. I think that's part of the stupid process I have, is just being open to all these options as opposed to making a character arc in the beginning and trying to adhere to it and put him in the slot. I just left it open-ended, and this guy's going to go the way he goes. And that I'm really, I sometimes I look back and I think, why did you do this to this guy? But it's been interesting, and I'm really happy with, as Rick is suffering from CTE, I'm really happy with where he's gone in the series, the challenges. So I do consider the Cahill series a success. So there's definitely a success for me. I feel that way.
The book is Odyssey's End, the magnum opus in Matt Coyle's addicting Rick Cahill series. His website is mattcoyle, Coyle, books.com. And his 5-star winner is available in hardcover, digital, and audiobook from Ocean View Publishing at Amazon and wherever cool books are sold. Matt, congratulations on another terrific tale, and thanks for joining us in Conversation.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.